Hello and welcome to this Fallout 4 settlement tour. This is Extreme Wagazoid and today we are looking at Coastal Cottage. Hopefully this will give you a few ideas of what you can do with the space. I'm using a few mods which are listed below, and every expansion pack of the game is also in use. And Coastal Cottage to me is probably one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult, settlements to work with. And the reason is that right down here below, if you're familiar with the space, there is a huge gaping hole in the ground, and it makes things very difficult to build around. I've seen some folks who are able to build like a little bit of a bunker area into that space, but I just cannot get that done, and so I kind of cheated and just built around this huge gaping hole. But maybe some of you will feel the same, and hopefully this will give you a few ideas of what you can do with that huge gaping hole in the ground. And so the first bit of that is just to make sure that this flooring will continue all the way across and also fit into the edges of these walls. And so that was probably the hardest part about it. This is a barn door floors, and I chose that because it kind of has the most generous clipping, if you will. It can go into the walls pretty well, and will actually snap into place like that. And then I also put these wooden stairs here and some track lighting here at the bottom, so that when you walk towards it, you just walk up it, and the settlers will do the same. And so that's what I did with that huge gaping hole. And so I want to give you some ideas of what else you can do with Coastal Cottage. One of the first things that I do when I build is I try to decide where I'm going to put my power source. And I usually put it up high because it gives it some added defense, and because pretty much attackers can only hit it with an indirect shot like a grenade. And then I also put a barrier around the power source, so that way it gives it some added protection, because attackers will definitely go after your power source. And so my power source is here on top of this second floor of this burnt out house, and then I put concrete barriers around. And there again, I really needed to fiddle around with it to make sure that this would actually all fit into place and leave as little space as possible otherwise. And so right here, the rest of this floor is that is where I put a restroom area, and so there's a shower here and then a toilet here. And here you can see I wasn't able to get flooring all the way across, but I did the best that I could. And then I'll show you this second floor area of this burnt out house. And if you get the floors right down here, you can that doesn't assure you that you'll get the floors right up here at the top. And so that's another piece of it that you really have to play around with to make sure that the floors will actually clip into here, and that these edges will not mess with the clipping too much. And so I believe these are warehouse flooring, which also have just generous clipping. And so up here is where I have my vendor stands. And so for every settlement, I pretty much have just 7 or 8 settlers. I think that's the most realistic. It's just the minimum amount that you need. And I always have 4 vendors. And these are the tier 3 vendors, because I actually use them to buy and sell things. And one of the things I do is I actually put items here in the shelves so it looks like they're actually selling something. And for my clinic vendor, I always give them a lab coat. And otherwise, all my settlers here are wearing the same outfit as these blue outfits. And I gave them all these metal helmets. Typically, I give them that type of hat because you can get ballistic weave for added protection. there's only about 4 hats that allow for ballistic weave. Out on the edges of this space, I have some minigun turrets and I believe heavy laser turrets, and they're all on these ball track supports with just one wooden square, and I put them up high so that way melee attackers can't get to them. And over here I wanted a restaurant area, so if you build a restaurant, your settlers will actually take a break at the end of the day and line up and it looks like they're getting food and take a seat down here. And so with this I put some wooden shack roofs on top with these barn supports to keep it up high. This is a warehouse foundation flooring. And then what I do here, if I have space, is I like to make it look like it's an actual functioning restaurant. And so I use OCDecorator to place some of these items. So there's a sink and a refrigerator, oven, some cabinets, and then I put a grill here as well for the restaurant. All of my settlements, they grow mute fruit. It's the most efficient food to grow. It is 1 food per plant, and so you need the least amount of food to get to a sustainable level. And so what I wanted to do right here is there's this burnt out house, and then it ends right there, and so I wanted to put a space that connects right up against it, and so you can't really tell where it ends and where the my settlement structure begins. And so that's what's in this space, is just a couple of beds. I put some shelving in there, so you know, it looks like they actually keep items and things like that. And so what I wanted to do with this space is to, again, build a barn structure so that it goes right up against the existing barn structure, so you can't really tell where my structure ends and the original begins. And probably the hardest thing to do, if you're considering doing that, is you want to make sure that the roof will continue through, because inside this space the roof is all burnt out, and so you want to be able to be sure that you have a roof that will kind of clip throughout, and if you can see kind of right there, it does. And so that was kind of the first consideration, really, is where if I can have a roof in here, how does it snap in? And then from there I was able to just continue the roof along into this additional structure. So all this really is just residence for my settlers. This is warehouse foundations. I find warehouse foundations is the easiest to use with your select all trick. Things can sink into the warehouse foundation pretty well, so it makes it a lot easier to work with. And so here's just some beds. I use all the same beds. They look nice, and some shelving as well. And so there's where the original barn is, and this is where my structure begins. And then I like to have multiple exits if possible, because I think if I lived in a wasteland situation, I would want multiple foundations. And so all the wiring is on top of each of these structures. Again, what I do is I determine where my energy source is going to be, and then I wire it from there. And then down here, all the way at the bottom, is Brahmin feed trough. And so this is Coastal Cottage. So hopefully this will give you a few ideas of what you can do with the space. If you like what you see, then click like, and you can favorite the channel as well. So thank you.